This story is titled, My Parents Wanted Me to Drop Out of College to Support Their Lazy Golden Child's Big Dreams. When I refused, they came off financially. So I moved out and went no contact. Hi everyone! Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey everyone! So, I never thought I'd be the kind of person to share my personal stuff here. But after seeing how many of you open up about your stories, I figured I'd give it a shot and share mine too. I'm a 20-year-old guy, in my second year of college, and somehow I've found myself in this weird, messy situation with my family. It's the kind of thing you think only happens in movies, but nope, this is real life, and I'm living it. If nothing else, maybe writing it all down will help me make sense of things. Alright, here's the backstory. I grew up in a smallish town where my family ran this bakery that's been around forever. I'm talking decades. It was originally started by my grandparents, and my parents took over after they retired. It's the kind of place everyone in town knows about, not because it's fancy or anything, but because it's always been there. People go for the same bread, pastries, and coffee they've been buying since they were kids. For my parents, the bakery isn't just a business. It's their whole life. They've poured everything into it. Late nights, early mornings, holidays, it doesn't matter. My mom would always say, "This bakery is the heart of our family," and my dad would go on about how it was our legacy. As a kid, I helped out here and there, mostly because I had to. I'd sweep floors, refill the pastry case, or bag up orders. Nothing too serious, but it was enough to give me an idea of how much work goes into running a place like that. My parents would talk sometimes about how they hoped one of us, me or my younger brother, would take it over one day. Here's the thing. I never really saw myself in that role. Don't get me wrong, I appreciated the bakery for what it was, but it wasn't my dream. I didn't have the same attachment to it that my parents did. I was more focused on school and figuring out my own path. Then there's Trevor, my younger brother. He's 18 now, but he's been the golden child since we were kids. You know the type. He could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. If he managed to clean his room without being asked, they'd act like he was the most responsible kid in the world. Meanwhile, I was expected to just handle everything without any fuss. Like, when we were younger, I'd be the one doing most of the chores around the house, while Trevor would get a pass every time. My parents would say, "Oh, he's not good at that," or "He needs more encouragement." Meanwhile, if I ever forgot to do something, I'd get a lecture about responsibility. The favoritism didn't stop there. Trevor got new gadgets for every little milestone. He passed a math test, new headphones. He got through a week of school without any issues, new video game. Me? I'd bring home good grades and maybe get a good job if I was lucky. It wasn't that I wanted stuff. It was more about how obvious the difference in treatment was. By the time I hit high school, I'd learned to just let it go. My focus was on getting into college. I worked hard, saved up what I could, and managed to get some scholarships to help cover tuition. My parents chipped in for some of it, but I also worked part-time to cover things like textbooks and groceries. When I left for college, I thought I'd finally be able to focus on myself without all the family dynamics weighing me down. And for a while, it felt like I had some breathing room. I'd come home on weekends sometimes, help out at the bakery, and then go back to campus. It wasn't perfect, but it was manageable. The thing is, every time I came home, my parents would drop little hints about the bakery. Stuff like, "It's so nice to have you here," or "You're so reliable, we don't know what we'd do without you." It was subtle, but I could tell they were planting the idea in my head. Trevor, on the other hand, was barely around. He'd pop in for an hour, maybe mess with the register or eat a croissant, and then disappear. If I ever brought up how Trevor is not really doing anything to help, my parents would immediately brush me off. "He's still young and trying to figuring things out," they'd say. "He's not ready for that kind of responsibility." It didn't make sense to me, but I stopped arguing because it always ended the same way with me feeling like I was being unreasonable for expecting him to pull his weight. Anyway, things were going fine during my second year of college. I was staying on top of my classes, working a part-time job, and feeling like I was starting to get a handle on my future. Then, one weekend, I decided to go home for a visit. I figured it'd be like any other visit. Eat a home-cooked meal, maybe help out at the bakery for a bit, and then head back to campus. But when I got there, the whole vibe was different. My parents sat me down in the living room with this super serious energy, like they had something big to tell me. Trevor was sitting off to the side, scrolling through his phone and barely paying attention. And then they hit me with it. My mom spoke first, her voice firm. "Look, we're short-staffed. Your father and I can't handle it alone, and we've decided it's time for you to step up and take your place in the family business. We want you to drop out of college. The bakery needs you." I froze for a second, trying to figure out if I'd heard her right. My dad leaned forward, like he was doubling down before I even had a chance to respond. "Trevor's not ready yet. He's still figuring things out. But you're reliable, responsible. You've always been the one we could count on." I didn't know what to say at first. I wasn't sure if they were expecting me to smile and say, "Sure, I'll just throw away everything I've been working for," or if they actually thought this was a reasonable request. Either way, I needed a second to let it sink in. Finally, I managed to ask, "You want me to, what? Drop out of college?" My mom nodded like it was the most logical thing in the world. "We need someone we can trust at the bakery full time. We can't keep running it on our own, and hiring help isn't an option right now. You could go back to school later, maybe in a few years, when things are more stable." I looked at Trevor, who was sitting there with his headphones half on, scrolling through his phone. He hadn't even looked up. "And what about him?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why can't he help?" My dad jumped in before my mom could answer. "Trevor will help, eventually, but he's still young. He hasn't figured out yet what he wants to do." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He's only 2 years younger than me," I pointed out. "Why does he get time to figure things out, but I don't? Why do I have to give up everything while he just hangs out?" Trevor finally looked up, smirking like this whole thing was some kind of joke. "I'm not really cut out for the bakery life," he said casually. "I've got bigger plans." I turned back to my parents, waiting for them to say something. Anything that made sense. Instead, my mom gave me this look, like she was disappointed I wasn't immediately on board. "You know how much the bakery means to this family," she said. "We've sacrificed so much to keep it running and provide for you. It's time for you to give back." "Give back?" I repeated, my voice rising a little. "I've been working hard to build a future for myself. I've been paying for part of my own tuition, working part-time, keeping my grades up, and now you want me to just throw it all away because Trevor isn't ready? How is that fair?" My dad's face darkened. "This isn't about fairness," he said sharply. "It's about family. The bakery is our legacy. Without it, we have nothing." I felt my stomach twist. "Then hire someone," I said, trying to keep calm. "You don't need me to do this. There are plenty of people who'd love a job." My mom shook her head. "We can't afford to hire anyone right now. Things are tight, but if you come back and help, we can turn things around. We're not asking you to do this forever, just until we're back on our feet." I felt a surge of disbelief. "So you expect me to drop out of college and work for you without even getting paid? How does that make any sense?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. My dad's face flushed with anger. "You're so selfish," he snapped. "We've done everything for you. Paid for your education, put food on the table, gave you a roof over your head, and now, when we need you, you're turning your back on us? You think the world owes you something just because you're in college?" That's when it hit me. They'd already made up their minds. This wasn't a discussion. It was an ultimatum. They weren't looking for my input. They were just waiting for me to fall in line. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice trembling as I fought to steady it. "But I'm not dropping out of college. I've worked too hard to get here. I'm not giving that up." My dad's expression hardened. "If you don't want to be part of this family, that's your choice," he said coldly. "But if you walk away now, we're done supporting you. Do not expect from us the tuition. No more rent and no more anything. You're on your own." They knew I couldn't easily pay the rest of my college fees on my own, but I swallowed my fear. This was too big a demand to roll over and comply. I looked at my mom, hoping for some kind of reassurance, some sign that she didn't agree with him, but she just nodded. She looked disappointed. "We sacrifices so much for your education already," she said. "This is the least you could do in return." Trevor, of course, couldn't resist throwing in his 2 cents. "Guess you're not as reliable as they thought," he said with a smirk. I ignored him. My hands were clenched into fists, and I could feel this knot in my chest that wouldn't go away. But I wasn't going to back down. "I'm not dropping out," I said again, this time more firmly. The room went quiet. My dad's face was like stone, and my mom looked like she might cry. Trevor just leaned back in his chair, looking smug. Finally, my dad stood up, his voice low and steady. "If you leave this house without agreeing to help, don't bother coming back," he said. I stared at him for a moment, trying to process what he'd just said. I stood up too. "Fine," I managed to say, voice trembling. With those words hanging in the air, I just walked out of the house. I didn't even bother saying goodbye. My dad's cold glare followed me all the way to the door, and my mom didn't say another word. I think part of me was waiting for her to call me back, to say they didn't mean it, but she didn't. The second I stepped outside, it felt like the weight of the whole conversation hit me. My heart was racing, and my hands were shaking. I didn't really know where to go or what to do. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there, not after everything they'd just said. I ended up driving to my friend Marcus's apartment. We'd been close since high school, and he was the kind of guy you could count on when things went sideways. When I showed up at his door, he took one look at me and immediately knew something was wrong. He opened the door and stepped aside. He looked concerned about me. I walked in, dropping my bag by the couch, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over me. Without needing much explanation, he immediately offered his support, telling me I could stay as long as I needed, his reassurance a small but much-needed relief in that moment. That night, I barely slept. My mind was racing with questions and worries. How was I going to pay for school without my parents' help? What about rent? Groceries? And what about my stuff? Most of my things were still back at the house. I couldn't just leave everything behind. The next morning, I decided I had to go back. I wasn't planning on staying long, just enough time to grab my essentials. Marcus offered to come with me, but I told him I'd be fine. I didn't want to drag him into the mess. When I pulled into the driveway, my stomach was in knots. I felt I didn't belong to that house anymore. I walked in without knocking, because I wasn't in the mood to wait for anyone to let me in. My mom was in the kitchen, flipping through some paperwork. She looked up when she saw me, her expression a mix of surprise and disappointment. "Have you come to your senses?" she asked, setting the papers down. I ignored the question and said, "I'm just here to grab my stuff." Her face fell a little, but she didn't argue. "You know, we're only doing this because we care about you," she said. I didn't respond. I just headed to my room and started packing. As I stuffed clothes into a duffel bag, my dad appeared in the doorway. He leaned against the frame, watching me like he was waiting for me to crack. I kept packing. "I don't see how staying here and giving up everything I've worked for is the better option," I said without looking at him. "You think you're too good for this family now?" He shot back. "It's not about being too good," I said, zipping up the bag. "It's about not throwing away my future because Trevor doesn't want to help while he has nothing to do." At the mention of Trevor, my dad's expression darkened even more. "Your brother needs time," he said sharply. "He's not ready for this kind of responsibility." "And I am?" I asked, turning to face him. "You're willing to let me give up everything, but he gets a free pass? How is that fair?" He didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he just shook his head and walked away, muttering something under his breath. As I was about to leave, Trevor finally made an appearance. He was coming out of his room, earphones still dangling around his neck, and gave me one of his trademark smirks. "Leaving already?" he asked. I didn't answer. I was not in the mood for his nonsense. "Well, don't let the door hit you on the way out," he said, laughing. I turned to him, my frustration boiling over. "You know, this is your mess too. Maybe if you actually stepped up for once, none of this would be happening." He rolled his eyes. "Not my problem." I didn't have the energy to argue with him. I slung my bag over my shoulder and headed for the door. My mom was waiting in the hallway, tears in her eyes. "If you leave now, don't expect us to help you anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "Remember, no tuition, no rent, nothing. You'll be on your own." "I figured as much," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. With that, I walked out. The drive back to Marcus's place was quiet, but my brain wouldn't shut up. I kept replaying the whole mess with my parents, second-guessing every word I said. Sure, I knew I made the right call by standing my ground. There was no way I was throwing away everything I'd worked for. But, honestly, I was scared out of my mind. What if I couldn't keep up with rent or tuition? What if this whole thing backfired? The idea of being completely on my own for the first time felt way more real now, and it was terrifying. By the time I pulled into Marcus's driveway, I realized my hands were gripping the wheel like it was the only thing holding me together. For now, I just need a moment to breathe and figure out what comes next. I'll keep you guys updated. Update 1. Hey everyone, I thought I'd post an update since things have gotten even messier since the last time I shared. I'm still processing everything, but writing it out here helps me think straight, so thanks for reading. After leaving my parents' house with everything I could grab, I crashed at Marcus's place for the night. I didn't have a solid plan yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back. No way was I giving up my future to clean up their mess. Well, the next day, my parents wasted no time making good on their threats. When I woke up, I realized my phone line had been cut off. I couldn't call or text anyone until I got a prepaid plan set up. On top of that, my rent payment bounced because my mom had apparently canceled the auto pay they'd been handling. It was like they wanted to remind me at every turn that I was on my own now. It felt petty and calculated, like they were trying to make me second guess my decision. I won't lie. It worked for a second. There was a moment where I thought, maybe it's easier to just go back and do what they want. But then I remembered the way my dad looked at me, like I'd failed him, and the way Trevor smirked, as if he knew I'd eventually cave and save the day. That snapped me out of it. I scrambled to figure things out. First, I went to a nearby store and got a cheap prepaid phone plan. It wasn't great, but at least I had a way to communicate again. Then I started going through all my bank accounts and other bills to make sure my parents couldn't mess with anything else. I didn't realize how much they had access to until I started digging. It was overwhelming, but I couldn't afford to miss anything. By the end of the day, I'd managed to untangle most of it. Rent, utilities, my car payment, all of it was now in my control. It felt like I was cleaning up after a storm, but at least I was making progress. The bigger issue for me at that time was money. My part-time job at the diner barely covered groceries and textbooks before all this happened. Now I had to figure out how to stretch that income to cover rent, utilities, and everything else. I talked to my manager and asked if I could pick up more shifts. He was hesitant at first since the schedule was already tight, but he eventually gave me a few extra hours. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Next, I went to the financial aid office at school. Explaining my situation to them was tough. I hated feeling like I was begging for help, but they were surprisingly understanding. The advisor I spoke to helped me apply for an emergency scholarship and a small personal loan. It wouldn't cover everything, but it eased some of the pressure. Meanwhile, my parents started blowing up my social media. Since they couldn't reach me by phone anymore, they sent me a barrage of messages through Facebook and Instagram. My dad's messages were short and to the point. "You're being selfish. Come back and fix this mess." My mom's were all about family and how I was tearing them apart. And then there was Trevor. He only sent one message, but it was enough to make my blood boil. "You're so stupid for not taking the easy path," he wrote. "You're just making your life harder for no reason." Easy path? This guy had the nerve to call it easy when he hadn't done a single thing to help the bakery. He had no idea what it was like to juggle school, work, and now all these unexpected bills. He was sitting at home, doing nothing, while I was out here trying to keep my head above water. To make things worse, my parents started spreading their version of events to the extended family. I found out through an aunt that my dad had been telling people I'd abandoned the bakery and left them in a tough spot. He painted me as this ungrateful kid who didn't care about the family or our legacy. My aunts and uncles on my dad's side completely bought into my parents' version of the story. They started messaging me, saying things like I needed to step up and do the right thing for the family. It was frustrating but not surprising, considering how close they are to my parents. A few cousins, though, were more skeptical and reached out to hear my side of things. I told them the truth. My parents wanted me to throw away my future so I could bail out Trevor, who wasn't even willing to lift a finger to help with the shop. Some of them believed me and said they understood, but others still seemed to think I was the selfish one, which stung more than I expected. It was exhausting. I felt like I was fighting battles on every front, financially, emotionally, and even with my own family's perception of me. I tried to stay focused on what I needed to do, but there were moments where it felt like too much. At one point, I overheard Marcus on the phone with someone explaining my situation. When he hung up, he turned to me and said, "You know, you're doing better than most people would in your shoes." I didn't feel like I was doing well at all, but hearing him say that helped a little. Over the next few days, I started piecing together a plan. I made a strict budget and cut out every unnecessary expense. No more takeout, no streaming services, nothing that wasn't essential. I started looking into other part-time jobs that might pay better or give me more hours. Even with all that, it was clear I wasn't going to make it through the semester without some serious sacrifices. Tuition was still looming over me, and while the emergency scholarship and loan helped, they didn't cover everything. My parents kept sending messages, though the tone shifted slightly. My dad's messages stayed firm and demanding, but my mom's became more desperate. She wrote things like, "Trevor isn't handling the pressure well," and "We really need you to come back before it's too late." They made it sound like the bakery was on the brink of collapsing. I don't know if that was true or just another manipulation tactic, but either way, it didn't change my decision. For now, I'm holding my ground and figuring things out step by step. I'll update you all again when I've got more to share. Thanks for sticking with me through this. It means a lot. Update 2. Hey guys, back with another update. Things have taken a wild turn since the last time I posted. I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of it. So, picking up where I left off last time, I was scrambling to figure out how to stay afloat after my parents completely cut me off. So far, I'd managed to sort out my rent and switch to a prepaid phone plan, and I was juggling extra shifts at the diner while trying to keep up with classes. It was rough, but I was determined to make it work. But over the past few weeks, I've been hearing more about what's going on back at the bakery, and let's just say it's not looking good. From what I've gathered through friends and people in town, the bakery is on the verge of collapsing. Apparently, my parents are struggling to keep up with everything. The shelves aren't stocked like they used to be, and customers are noticing the decline in quality. One of my friends, Chloe, who drops by the bakery occasionally, told me that the vibe there has completely shifted. My parents seem stressed all the time, snapping at each other and at customers. She said it feels like they're barely holding things together. At first, I thought it was just the natural consequence of them losing an extra pair of hands. I mean, I did a lot when I helped out, so it made sense that they'd be struggling without me. But then I started hearing whispers about some bigger issues, financial problems, unpaid invoices, and even rumors that they might be in debt. It was hard to hear, honestly. Despite everything that's happened, I don't want to see the bakery fail. It's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, and I know how much it means to my parents. But as more details started coming to light, I realized there was a lot more going on than I initially thought. Things got really messy. One day, Chloe mentioned seeing a notice posted on the bakery's door about a missed payment. She couldn't tell what it was for exactly, but it seemed serious. That got me curious, so I started digging around a little. I didn't want to ask my parents directly, no way was I opening that can of worms, but I did some snooping online and even asked a few mutual connections if they'd heard anything. Eventually, I stumbled across something that made my stomach drop. It turns out my parents had taken out a massive loan a while back, using the bakery as collateral. The loan itself wasn't entirely surprising. I mean, small businesses do that sometimes. But what caught my attention was why they did it. At first, I thought it was just to keep the bakery running. Maybe they needed extra funds to cover supplies or expand the business. But then I found out the real reason. Trevor. Apparently, my parents weren't just trying to save the bakery. They were trying to fund some big secret plan for him. From what I can piece together, Trevor had convinced them he had these big plans and brilliant business idea. He wanted to start his own high-end gaming cafe. I don't even know how they listened to him. He had no real experience or qualifications to back it up. He's just cobbled together buzzwords and flashy ideas from things he's seen online, assuming they'll make him rich. I found out about this when I came across some documents at Chloe's place. Long story short, she has a friend who used to work with my parents, and they shared some old paperwork that got left behind. One of the documents was a loan application that mentioned Trevor's name and outlined his vision for a new business. It gets worse. The loan wasn't just tied to the bakery, they had also mortgaged part of their home to secure the funds. They were banking everything on Trevor's so-called big plans. I couldn't believe it. They were willing to risk their entire livelihood to support his dream, even though he'd never shown any real responsibility or commitment to anything. Looking back, it all started to make sense. The pressure they were putting on me to quit school and help at the bakery wasn't just about preserving the family business, it was about covering for Trevor's failure. They needed me to step in and keep the bakery running while they funneled money and resources into his project. I don't know why they didn't just tell me up front. Maybe they were embarrassed, or maybe they thought I'd refuse outright if I knew the truth. Either way, it felt like another betrayal. They were willing to throw my future under the bus to prop up Trevor, and they didn't even have the decency to be honest about it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I've been busting my ass to make ends meet, all while they've been bending over backward to support Trevor's pipe dream. And where's Trevor in all this? Nowhere to be found. From what I've heard, he's barely involved in the bakery anymore, and his big plans haven't gone anywhere. It's infuriating, but it also solidifies something I've been feeling for a while now. I made the right decision by walking away. If I'd stayed, I would have been nothing more than a band-aid for a problem I didn't create. That said, it's not easy knowing the bakery is in such bad shape. Like I mentioned earlier, it's been a huge part of my life, and I know how much blood, sweat, and tears my parents put into it over the years. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like this is a mess they created by putting all their eggs in Trevor's basket. For now, I'm focusing on keeping myself afloat. I've managed to settle into a routine with school, work, and budgeting, but there's still a long way to go. I don't know what's going to happen with the bakery, and honestly, I don't know if my relationship with my parents can ever fully recover after this. I'll update you all again when I have more to share. Thanks for sticking with me. It means a lot. Final update. Hey again, this will probably be my last update. Things have escalated to a point where I've had to make some tough decisions, and I think it's time to finally close this chapter of my life. Thanks to everyone who's been following along and offering support. It's helped more than I can say. So, last time, I mentioned finding out about the loan my parents took out and how it wasn't just to keep the bakery afloat. It was to fund Trevor's so-called big plans. That discovery alone was hard enough to process. I'd already been dealing with the fallout of being cut off and trying to piece my life together, and knowing that my parents were risking everything for Trevor while expecting me to sacrifice my future just made it worse. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Trevor directly since I left. Most of our communication had been through their guilt-laden messages on social media. But out of nowhere, my mom called me last week. She used a number I didn't recognize, probably because I'd blocked her main one, and I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. She sounded tired and on the verge of tears, which threw me off right away. For a moment, I thought she was finally ready to apologize, or at least acknowledge how unfair everything had been. But no, the first words out of her mouth were, "We need you to come back." I stayed quiet, letting her talk. She went on about how the bakery was in trouble and how Trevor's big opportunity hadn't worked out the way they'd hoped. She didn't go into much detail, but it was clear that whatever dream he'd sold them on had fallen apart. Then she hit me with "Trevor's struggling," she said, her voice breaking. "He's not handling the pressure well. Your father and I are doing everything we can, but we can't do this without you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even after everything, they were still prioritizing Trevor's needs over mine. They weren't calling to check on me or make amends. They just wanted me to come back and clean up their mess. "Why would I do that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You cut me off, told me I wasn't part of the family anymore, and now you expect me to come back like nothing happened?" She started crying, saying things like, "We didn't mean it," and "You know we've always cared about you." But when I pressed her about the loan and Trevor's involvement, she got defensive. She claimed they were just trying to help him find his path, that they believed he had potential, and that sometimes you have to take risks for family. I told her that risking the bakery and their home on Trevor's pipe dream was reckless, especially when he had no real experience or track record. She didn't have much to say to that, except, "We thought it would work out." That's when my dad got on the phone. He was angry. He accused me of abandoning them and said I was being selfish for refusing to help. "This family raised you, gave you everything, and now you're turning your back on us when we need you most," he said. I snapped. "You didn't need me when you decided to mortgage the bakery for Trevor. You didn't need me when you cut off my tuition or canceled my rent payments. You only need me now because you're out of options, and Trevor can't fix this mess." My dad got even angrier, saying I had no idea how hard they'd worked or how much they'd sacrificed for the bakery, and for me. But at that point, I was done. "Sacrifice?" I said. "You're the ones who made the choice to risk everything for Trevor. You didn't ask me what I thought, and you didn't care what it cost me. So don't sit there and act like I owe you anything." I hung up before he could say anything else. The call left me shaken, but it also confirmed something I'd been avoiding for a while. I needed to cut them out of my life completely. Every interaction with them just reopened old wounds and reminded me of how little they valued me compared to Trevor. Speaking of Trevor, he sent me one last message after the call. It was a long rant about how I was letting the family down, and how he was trying his best to make something of himself. He even tried to spin it like I was the reason his plans didn't work out, saying that if I'd stayed and helped at the bakery, things might have gone differently. I didn't respond. What was there to say? He'll never take responsibility for his actions, and I'm done wasting my energy on someone who can't even acknowledge how much damage he's caused. So, here's where I'm at now. I've blocked all of them. My parents, Trevor, even the meddling relatives who keep trying to push me into doing the right thing. I've deleted them from social media, changed my phone number again, and told my close friends to ignore any messages they might get from my family. It's not an easy decision, and I know there will be days when it feels lonely. But I can't keep putting myself in situations where I'm treated like a backup plan or a scapegoat. I'm currently focusing on my studies, keeping up with work, and slowly rebuilding my confidence. It's not perfect, and it's definitely not easy, but it feels like the right path. Thanks again to everyone who's read and supported me through this journey. Your kindness and advice have meant more than you know. I'm signing off now, but if you're ever in a situation like mine, just remember, you're allowed to put yourself first. Take care, everyone. This story is titled, "My Parents Want Me to Move Out While I Keep Paying Rent So My Golden Child Brother Can Move In With Them, But I Do Something Better. Keep the House." Hi, everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and make sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey people. So, I've been sitting on this story for a bit because, honestly, I still can't believe it's my life. But here I am, sharing it because maybe someone out there has been in my shoes, or has advice. Fair warning, it's a bit long, but I need to explain everything for it to make sense. So, I'm the younger sibling in a family where my older brother Chase is the golden child. If you've ever heard the term golden child, just know my brother could be the poster boy for it. Chase has always been the favorite, and my mom doesn't even try to hide it. My mother is the classic case of a parent whose entire life revolves around her son. So, from the time he was born, he could do no wrong. Every accomplishment he had, no matter how small, was treated like it deserved a parade. Meanwhile, I could have won a Nobel Prize, and it'd just be, "Oh, that's nice, dear. Did you hear Chase got a B+ in math?" Growing up, everything revolved around Chase. He always got the best toys, the first pick of whatever, and he never shared. I remember being 5 years old begging to watch The Little Mermaid, but Chase insisted on Jurassic Park, so guess what we watched? My mom's reasoning? Well, he's older, sweetie. That was pretty much the theme of my childhood. When Chase went off to college, I thought I'd finally get a break. But no, my mom acted like the world was ending. She was inconsolable, constantly saying how much she missed her baby boy and how quiet the house felt without him. I was still there, by the way, but apparently I didn't count. She'd call him multiple times a day, email him, even send him care packages weekly. I don't think I've ever received a care package in my life, but sure, Chase needed one every 7 days. After Chase graduated, he got engaged to his longtime girlfriend, Harper. She's honestly nice, and I've got no beef with her, but that engagement brought out a new level of crazy in my mom. She treated it like it was her own wedding. I'm talking about obsessing over the venue, picking out decorations, and even buying a dress that looked suspiciously bridal. Harper was gracious about the whole thing, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled about my mom trying to steal the spotlight. Chase and Harper settled in Austin after they got married. It's a decent distance from us here in North Carolina, so I thought my mom might finally start focusing on her own life instead of obsessing over Chase. But no. Instead, she started daydreaming about them moving back. My mom has this fantasy of a big, multi-generational household where we all live together under one roof, and she gets to play grandma to a bunch of kids. Never mind the fact that Chase and Harper don't even have kids yet. While all this was happening, I stayed local for college. It made sense financially, and I figured it'd be nice to help my parents out since they were getting older. After I graduated, I landed a pretty decent job in the city and decided to keep living at home. It was convenient. My job was only a 15-minute drive away, and I figured I'd save up some money while helping out around the house. Plus, my parents had mentioned several times that they planned to leave me the house someday. My mom used to say things like, "One day, this place will be yours, and your dad and I will move to Texas to be closer to Chase and Harper's kids." Of course, that was before it became clear there weren't going to be any grandkids anytime soon. For the past few years, I've been covering most of the bills. My parents retired early, and while they have a little bit of savings, it's not enough to cover everything. So I've been the one keeping the lights on, paying for groceries, and making sure everything gets taken care of. It hasn't been easy, but I didn't mind too much. I thought I was doing the right thing by supporting my family. Besides, it's not like Chase was contributing. He rarely even visits. The last time I saw him was Thanksgiving 2 years ago, and even then, he spent most of the time complaining about his life in Texas. Now you'd think my parents would appreciate the fact that I've been holding down the fort all these years. But no. Instead, my mom spends most of her time talking about how much she misses Chase and how she wishes he'd move back home. It's exhausting. Anytime we sit down for dinner, it's, "Do you think Chase and Harper will ever move back? It would be so nice to have them here, don't you think?" She even has this idea that she and Dad could convert one of the spare rooms into a nursery for when they finally have grandkids. Never mind that they don't even have a spare room, because they turned Chase's old bedroom into a home office years ago. Speaking of the home office, let me tell you about that. After Chase moved to Texas, my dad decided to remodel his old room. He turned it into a fully decked out office for my mom, complete with a custom desk and built-in shelves. My mom uses it for all her hobbies. Scrapbooking, writing letters, whatever. She loves that room, and for a while it seemed like she was finally moving on from her Chase obsession. But then Thanksgiving happened, and Chase made some offhand comment about how weird it felt not to have his old room anymore. My mom latched onto that and spent the next month trying to convince my dad to turn the office back into a bedroom, just in case Chase ever comes back. But he didn't. Anyway, that brings us to now. Things have been relatively quiet until recently, but something's changed. My mom's been acting, Weird. She's been dropping hints about big changes coming soon and asking me things like, have you ever thought about living on your own? The other night, she casually mentioned that it might be a good time for me to start looking for my own place and get married. At first, I thought she was just trying to be supportive or something, but now I'm not so sure. However, as the days went on, my mom's hints went from casual to straight up invasive. She kept asking questions like, do you ever feel like you're missing out on life? Or, wouldn't it be fun to decorate your own apartment? I didn't think too much of it at first, but then she started leaving rental listings on the kitchen counter. I'm not joking. There were printouts with circled addresses and notes in her handwriting like, great location and close to work. It was weird, but I didn't confront her right away. I guess I didn't want to believe she was actively trying to push me out. But things got clearer when my dad started dropping comments too. Now, my dad is usually the quieter one between my parents. He mostly keeps to himself and avoids family drama. So when he suddenly started saying things like, you're not a kid anymore, don't you want your own space? Or, you can't live with your parents forever, you have to get married or move out, I knew something was up. For context, I'm 27, so yeah, maybe living with my parents isn't ideal, but I've been doing it for practical reasons. It's not like I'm freeloading. I've been paying for everything. The whole setup worked because I've been footing the bills while they enjoy early retirement. So, why the sudden push for me to leave? Then, one night, everything clicked. We were having dinner and my mom casually said, you know, Chase and Harper are thinking about coming back to North Carolina. Wouldn't it be nice to have the whole family together again? She said it with this huge smile, like it was the best idea in the world. I didn't react much at first because I wanted to see where she was going with it. Sure enough, she kept talking. It's just that we don't have much room here anymore, she said, glancing at me like I was the problem. If they moved back, we'd have to make some adjustments. Maybe we could even turn your room into a nursery someday. I sat there, trying to process what I'd just heard. My room? The one I've been paying to keep a roof over? Now it's a future nursery for Chase's imaginary kids? It felt like a slap in the face, but I didn't say anything. My dad chimed in, saying, it's something to think about. You're doing great at work. You could afford a nice place of your own. I could feel the frustration bubbling up, but I stayed quiet. I wanted to hear their whole plan before I said anything. Over the next few days, they kept dropping more hints. My mom brought up the idea of turning the home office back into a bedroom, just in case. Chase and Harper needed it. She even started talking about how exciting it would be to have a full house again, as if I wasn't already living there. It became clear that this wasn't just some casual daydreaming. They were serious about Chase and Harper moving in. The part that really stung was how little they cared about my role in all this. I've been supporting them for years. I'm the reason the mortgage gets paid, the utilities stay on, and there's food in the fridge. Chase hasn't contributed a dime to this household since he moved to Texas. And now, because he might move back, they're ready to kick me out like I'm a guest who's overstayed their welcome. It's not just about the money either. It's the way they talk about Chase like he's the second coming of Christ. My mom keeps going on about how hard it must be for him to be so far from family. He's always been such a family-oriented person, she said the other day, as if the man didn't willingly move to another state and barely call home. Meanwhile, I've been here the whole time, doing everything I can to help them, and it's like none of that matters. What really got me was when I overheard my mom on the phone with one of her friends. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but she was talking loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. She was going on about how perfect it would be if Chase moved back, and how she couldn't wait to have Harper around to help out with the cooking. I didn't hear her mention me once. Not my name, not my contributions, nothing. It was like I didn't even exist in her vision of the future. The next day, my mom sat me down for what she called a family discussion. My dad was there too, but as usual, he just let her do most of the talking. She started by saying how proud they were of me and how much they appreciated everything I've done for them. It sounded nice at first, but then she pivoted to the real topic, Chase and Harper. We've been talking about how to make this house work for everyone, she said, and we think it might be time for you to spread your wings. I asked her what she meant, even though I already knew. Well, she said, with Chase and Harper coming back, it'll be a little crowded. But we think it's a good opportunity for you to find your own place and start living independently. She said it like it was some great gift they were giving me, as if pushing me out of the house I've been paying for was doing me a favor. I stayed calm and asked what they planned to do about the bills. My mom smiled and said, "Oh, we were hoping you could keep contributing for a while, just until Chase and Harper get settled." Yeah, because it made perfect sense. They wanted me to move out, but still pay the bills so Chase and Harper could live rent-free? I don't even know if Chase has agreed to move back yet, but they're already rolling out the red carpet for him. At this point, it was hard to keep my emotions in check. I asked why Chase couldn't just get a place nearby if he really wanted to come back. My mom sighed and said, "It's not that simple. They're going through a lot right now, and they need family support. You wouldn't understand. You've always been so independent." She said it like it was a bad thing, like my independence was some kind of character flaw. The conversation ended with my mom asking me to think about it and let them know what I decide. I didn't say much. I was too angry to trust myself to respond without blowing up. Afterward, I went to my room and started pacing, trying to figure out what to do. I've never felt so hurt and unappreciated in my life. It's like everything I've done for them means nothing compared to the chance to have Chase back under their roof. Ever since that conversation, I kept going back and forth between being hurt and furious. It was hard to focus on anything else. Every time I looked around the house, I kept thinking about how much of it I'd kept running. The fridge was stocked because of me. The power stayed on because of me. The Wi-Fi they used to binge-watch shows all day? But apparently, none of that mattered, because the golden child might be coming back. For the next week, things at home were weird. My parents were clearly waiting for my decision, but I wasn't ready to give them an answer yet. They kept acting like nothing was wrong, which made it worse. My mom was humming while making dinner, asking me how work was going, like she hadn't just asked me to uproot my life for Chase. My dad avoided me for the most part, which was typical of him when things got tense. Meanwhile, I started quietly preparing for what I knew I needed to do. I tried to figure out my options. I knew I couldn't keep living in a house where I was treated like an afterthought. Even if I stayed, the dynamic would never change, and I'd just be prolonging the inevitable. So I started looking for apartments. It wasn't easy because most places near my job were either outrageously expensive or came with reviews that sounded like horror stories. But I eventually found a small place that was reasonably priced and close enough to work that I could walk. The idea of not having to deal with traffic every morning was almost enough to make me smile. Once I decided to move, I realized how much I had to do before I could leave. First, I needed to make sure I had all my important documents. Birth certificate, social security card, bank information, all of it had to come with me. I wasn't about to give my parents any excuse to hold something over my head later. I also started packing my things little by little. I didn't want to make a big scene, so I worked on it late at night when everyone else was asleep. During this time, I've started seeing someone, and having my own place is priceless. The apartment was fully furnished, so I moved in right away. As I was planning all this, I started noticing things I hadn't paid much attention to before, like how much of the furniture in the house was technically mine. Even the microwave was something I picked up during a Black Friday sale because ours had stopped working. The more I looked around, the more I realized how much I'd contributed to this house, and it just made me angrier. How could they ask me to leave when so much of this place was held together by me? A few days before I planned to move out, I overheard another conversation between my mom and Chase. She was on the phone again, this time gushing about how excited she was for him to come home. She kept saying things like, "Don't worry about anything, sweetie, we'll figure it all out," and "We'll make sure you and Harper have everything you need." It was like she had already decided I was gone, and Chase was moving in, even though I hadn't told her anything yet. That was the final push I needed to get out of there. The night I moved out was emotional, but not in the way you might think. I waited until midnight to start loading my car because I'm dramatic just like that. My parents were asleep, and I wanted to avoid any confrontations. I'd already signed the lease on my new apartment, and the landlord had given me the keys, so there was nothing holding me back. Packing up my car was a surreal experience. I couldn't believe how much stuff I had accumulated over the years. It felt strange to see my life reduced to boxes and bags. Once everything was loaded up, I sat in the driver's seat for a moment and just breathed. I thought I'd feel sad or maybe even guilty, but all I felt was relief. I was finally doing something for myself, and it felt good. Before I pulled out of the driveway, I sent a quick text to my mom. "I've moved out. The bills are your responsibility now. Good luck with that." It wasn't the most graceful exit, but I didn't think they deserved much more than that. The next morning, my phone blew up with calls and messages from my mom. She left several voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. The first one was just her saying, "What's going on? Did you leave? Call me back." By the third voicemail, she was practically yelling, demanding to know where I was and why I hadn't told her I was leaving. I didn't respond. I blocked her, my dad, and Chase on every platform I could think of. I even blocked Harper, just to be safe. I knew they'd try to guilt me into coming back, and I wasn't about to let that happen. I focused on adjusting in my new apartment. It was small but cozy, and it already felt more like home than my parents' house ever did. I spent the first night unpacking and setting up my space. It was a little overwhelming, but it was also exciting. I finally had a place that was entirely mine, where I didn't have to walk on eggshells or deal with constant comparisons to Chase. The next day, I called a few close friends to let them know what had happened. They were all supportive and said they couldn't believe how my parents had treated me. One friend even offered to help me decorate my new place, which was a nice gesture. It felt good to know I had people in my corner. But just as I was starting to settle into my new life, I got a call that threw me off balance. It was from a neighbor back at my parents' house. She wanted to check on me because she'd overheard a big fight between Chase and Harper the day before. Apparently, Chase and Harper had already arrived at my parents' place, and things weren't going smoothly. After hearing about the fight from the neighbor, I felt a weird mix of relief and dread. Part of me thought, good, let them deal with their own chaos now. But another part of me couldn't stop wondering what was actually going on back there. I tried to push it out of my mind and focus on settling into my new life, but of course my family wasn't about to let me go that easily. A few days later, my Aunt Clara called me out of nowhere. She's my mom's cousin, but we all just call her Aunt Clara. She's one of those people who knows everyone's business and has no problem getting involved, even when no one asks her to. Honestly, I'd been avoiding her since I moved out because I knew she'd side with my parents. Sure enough, as soon as I picked up, she launched into a lecture. Here's what I just found out from a 2-hour phone call that nearly blew out my right eardrum. Your mother is heartbroken, you know, she said, skipping any sort of greeting. She's been crying nonstop since you left. How could you do this to her? To them? I took a deep breath and said, Clara, I didn't do anything to them. I just moved out. They're adults. They can handle it. She scoffed. Moved out? You abandoned them when they needed you most. Do you even know what's happening over there? I rolled my eyes, but something in her tone caught my attention. What are you talking about? I asked. There was a pause before she said, the house. They're behind on the mortgage. Your parents are on the verge of losing it. Now, this was news to me. What mortgage? I asked, confused. They paid off the house years ago. That's what you think, Clara said, clearly enjoying the drama. They took out a second mortgage a couple of years ago. Apparently, it was to help Chase and Harper. I can't believe you didn't know. My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything at first because I was too busy trying to process what I'd just heard. A second mortgage? For Chase and Harper? And I'd been unknowingly paying it off this whole time? Completely oblivious? Clara kept talking, but I barely heard her. Something about how I needed to come back and fix this mess because family sticks together. I hung up on her mid-sentence, which is probably the rudest thing I've ever done, but I didn't care. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them from her. The next day, I went to the bank. I wanted to confirm what Clara had said because part of me hoped she was just exaggerating. But nope, she wasn't. The bank teller confirmed that there was, indeed, a second mortgage on the house. It had been taken out 2 years ago, and the payments were being automatically withdrawn from the account I'd been depositing money into every month. All this time, I thought I was just covering utilities and helping out with groceries. Turns out, I was also paying for a mortgage I didn't even know existed. The rage I felt in that moment was indescribable. It wasn't just that they'd lied to me, it was the fact that they'd taken advantage of me for years without a second thought. I'd been working hard, budgeting carefully, and skipping out on luxuries so I could support them, and they used that money to bail out Chase and Harper. It was like every bad feeling I'd ever had about being second to Chase was suddenly validated in the worst way possible. I went home that night and just sat in my apartment. All I could think about was how stupid I'd been to trust them. I kept replaying every conversation we'd had about money, wondering how I didn't see the signs. My mom always made these offhand comments about how tight things were, but then insisted everything was fine whenever I offered to help more. Now I knew why, because they didn't want me asking too many questions. The worst part was realizing how much they must have given to Chase and Harper. My parents aren't exactly known for being financially savvy, so I wouldn't be surprised if they gave Chase the bulk of the loan in one big chunk instead of spreading it out. And knowing Chase, he probably blew through it without a second thought. I debated confronting my parents about it, but I wasn't sure I could handle the conversation without losing my temper. Plus, I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking I was coming back to help. They made this mess, and they have to clean it up on their own. Still, I couldn't help but feel hurt. It's one thing to play favorites. It's another thing entirely to lie to your kid and use their money to cover your mistakes. Over the next few days, I started getting more calls from family members. Clara must have told everyone because suddenly, I was the villain of the story. My uncle left me a voicemail saying I needed to step up and do the right thing. Another cousin texted me, calling me selfish for abandoning my parents when they were struggling, and that I left them on the verge of homelessness with nothing in their pockets. It was like they were all reading from the same script. What none of them seemed to understand was that this wasn't just about money. It was about years of being treated like I didn't matter. It was about always being expected to sacrifice for Chase while he got a free pass. And now, they wanted me to come back and fix everything because they couldn't admit they'd screwed up. No thanks. Still, part of me couldn't stop thinking about what Clara had said about the house being in jeopardy. As much as I wanted to let them deal with the fallout on their own, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen if they actually lost the house. Would they come crawling back to me, begging for help? Would Chase step up for once in his life? Or would they all just blame me for not swooping in to save the day? I don't have answers now, but I know one thing for sure. I am not going to be their safety net anymore. They'd burned that bridge the moment they decided Chase's comfort was more important than my trust. I'll keep you guys posted. Update 1. Hey guys, I came back with an update for you. So, here's where things stand now. A lot has happened since I found out about the second mortgage and decided to let my parents and Chase figure things out on their own. I thought I was done with them, but of course, nothing is ever that simple with my family. After weeks of silence from my parents, I got an unexpected letter from the bank. Yep, the same bank that confirmed the second mortgage. It was a notice about missed payments on the house. Apparently, my parents had been late on their payments for months, and now foreclosure was looming. The letter was addressed to me because, surprise, I was still listed as the primary contributor on their account. I don't know if it was laziness or some messed up manipulation tactic, but they never bothered to remove me after I moved out. I was furious. It wasn't enough that they'd lied to me and used my money to bail out Chase. They also dragged me into their financial disaster. I called the bank to clarify that I was no longer involved, but since the payments were coming from my account for so long, I was technically tied to the mortgage. The representative kindly explained that my parents could lose the house unless the overdue payments were covered immediately. She even asked if I'd like to make a payment right then. I almost laughed at the audacity. At first, I told myself I wasn't going to do anything. Let the house go. Let them all figure out where to live. But as much as I wanted to let it all burn, there was a part of me that couldn't let go of the house that was promised to be mine. I grew up there. I'd put so much money into it, not to mention memories. And let's be real. If my parents lost the house, they'd just show up at my doorstep, guilt-tripping me into taking them in. Chase would probably bring Harper along for the ride too. No way was I signing up for that nightmare. So, after a lot of thinking and venting to a few friends, I came up with a plan. If I was going to get involved, it would be on my terms. I wasn't about to bail them out without something to show for it. If they wanted to keep the house, it was going to be mine. The next day, I went back to the bank to figure out my options. Turns out buying the house outright was possible, but it would require my parents to transfer the title to me. Basically, I'd become their landlord. The idea was both satisfying and a little scary, but I knew it was the best way to protect myself. If they couldn't handle the responsibility, I'd take it out of their hands. Armed with this plan, I went back to my parents' house for the first time since I left. The atmosphere was tense as soon as I walked in. My mom tried to hug me, but I dodged her and went straight to the kitchen table, where Chase and Harper were sitting. Chase was scrolling through his phone like he didn't have a care in the world. Harper looked stressed, but she didn't say much. My dad was off to the side, pretending to read the newspaper. I laid it all out for them. I told them about the foreclosure notice, the missed payments, and how the bank had contacted me. My mom tried to interrupt with some excuse about how things have been tight, but I shut her down. I don't want to hear it, I said. You lied to me about the mortgage, used my money without telling me, and now you're expecting me to clean up your mess. Here's the deal. I'll save the house, but only if you sign it over to me. The room went silent. My dad was the first to speak. That's ridiculous, he said. This house is our legacy. You can't just take it from us. Your legacy? I shot back. You put this house at risk the moment you took out that second mortgage to help Chase. You've done nothing but take advantage of me, and now you're facing the consequences. Either sign it over or lose it. Chase finally looked up from his phone, glaring at me. You're seriously trying to steal the house? Wow, real classy. You always were jealous of me. I laughed in his face. Jealous? Of what? Your freeloading lifestyle? Please, I'm offering a solution to a problem you helped create. If you don't like it, feel free to pack your bags and find somewhere else to live. Harper looked like she wanted to say something, but held back. I couldn't blame her. It was clear she was stuck in the middle of all this chaos. My mom started crying, of course, But I didn't let it sway me. I'd seen this act too many times to fall for it again. It's your choice, I said, standing up. Sign the house over or let the bank take it. I don't care which. I gave them a week to decide. During that time, I kept getting calls from my mom begging me to reconsider. She tried every tactic: guilt, anger, manipulation, but I didn't budge. I told her the same thing every time. I'll take care of the house if it's mine, otherwise I'm out. Eventually, they caved. My dad called me a few days later, saying they were ready to sign the paperwork. I think the reality of losing the house finally hit them. They didn't want to move, and they definitely didn't want to rely on Aunt Clara or anyone else for help. Chase wasn't happy about it, but there wasn't much he could do. Harper, surprisingly, seemed relieved. I think she saw this as a chance to escape the chaos, even if she didn't say it outright. Once the paperwork was finalized, the house was officially mine. I made it clear that my parents could stay as long as they followed my rules. They had to keep up with their share of the bills, and Chase would have to start paying rent if he wanted to stay. No exceptions. Chase, of course, threw a tantrum. He called me every name in the book, accusing me of being selfish and ruining the family. I just shrugged it off. I'd spent enough of my life trying to please them, and I wasn't going to waste any more energy on his whining. As for my parents, they seemed to accept the new arrangement, but things were definitely strained between us. My mom barely spoke to me unless it was absolutely necessary, and my dad kept his distance. I could tell they resented me for taking control, but I didn't care. For the first time, I felt like I had the upper hand. The fallout wasn't pretty, but I didn't regret my decision. I'd spent years being taken for granted, and it was time for me to take back what I deserved. The house was mine now, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. I'll post a final update once I see how things will go. Final update. Hey everyone. It's been a while since I last updated, and things have changed a lot. I wanted to wrap up everything for those who followed this mess. So here's where things stand. After I officially took over the house, things got tense, as expected. Chase was furious. He called me names, accused me of being greedy, and even tried to guilt trip our parents into siding with him. None of it worked. They knew the alternative was losing the house entirely, and I think they realized how serious I was about not letting them steamroll me anymore. Chase refused to pay rent. He said it was disrespectful for me to charge him anything, and acted like it was beneath him to contribute. So I gave him a deadline. Pay up or get out. He didn't believe I'd follow through, but the day after his rent was due, I filed for eviction. He threw a fit and packed up to leave, dragging Harper with him. Harper, though, didn't stick around with Chase for long. A few weeks later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she left him. She got a new job, found her own place, and seems to be doing well. I can't say I blame her. She was stuck in an impossible situation with him. Good for her for getting out. As for my parents, they've stayed in the house under my conditions. They handle their share of the bills now, though there's still some resentment between us. I think my mom's dream of having Chase and Harper close by is officially dead, and she doesn't quite know how to handle it. My dad, to his credit, has kept things civil. We're not exactly close, but at least we're not at each other's throats. Honestly, things are calmer now. The house is quiet, and I'm finally starting to feel like I have control over my life again. It's not perfect. Family relationships rarely are, but I don't regret the decisions I made. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not just a supporting character in someone else's story. That's it for now. Thanks to everyone who gave advice and support along the way. It helped me more than I can say. Who knows? Maybe I'll be back someday with another update. But for now, I'm just focused on moving forward.